Uh, I moved out and moved to Hawaii for college. I recently became the first in my family to obtain a college degree and graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Global Environmental Science at UH Manoa. And so fast forward today, I currently act as the Climate Change Communication Specialist as part of the Climate Ready Hawaii Vista cohort, which is all housed within the commission. And so a large part of my job is to break down complex climate change issues in a way that is accessible, in a way that is digestible, and in a way that is relevant to the different groups that we talk to. And so for some context to how I found myself in this field was that while I was pursuing my degree, I quickly realized that there was this huge gap between the science and the research that is being done by the scientific community and its translation into real world applications to address our very real and very pressing issues like climate change. And so this prompted me to want to be a sort of middleman in order to bridge the gap between the findings of these robust scientific research and helping others understand what this research, what these results, these data mean, and help them understand so that they can help make informed decisions when addressing issues that are important in their communities. And so that's how I found myself to be part of the Climate Ready Hawaii Vista cohort, which was created to address climate readiness and equity issues. So we're the first cohort within the state of Hawaii for the Climate Ready Hawaii Vista cohort. And we're actually spread across 4 key state offices. So I'm housed under the Department of Land and Natural Resources, but we do have vistas at the Department of Health, Hawaii State Energy Office, and the Office of Planning for Sustainable Development. And we were all brought together to help build capacity and help integrate climate change work through data collection, outreach, education, and integrate climate change into the multiple sectors of transportation, energy, equity, and all of that. And so the commission itself was actually created in 2017 to uphold the United States commitments to the Paris Agreement. So for those of you who may not be familiar, the Paris Agreement was created in 2016, where 197 countries across the world collectively came together and agreed to limit global temperatures below 2 degrees Celsius in order to combat the climate crisis. So in 2016, during the Trump administration, the United States decided to pull out of this agreement. And so in response to that, Hawaii and a bunch of other states decided that it was way more important to uphold the goals of the Paris Agreement with or without federal support. And so through that, Act 32, we created the Hawai'i Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission. And so we are created with a mission statement that recognizes the urgency of climate threats and our need to act quickly. So our commission promotes strategies for climate change adaptation and mitigation in a manner that is equitable, in a manner that is clean and resilient. So what we do, what we don't do is we don't create laws, we don't create legislation that impacts climate action. But what we do is we put out statements and reports based on sound scientific research to help urge Hawaii become climate ready. So again, being that middleman in order to make sure that the people that the science that we do goes to the communities that need them. And so we have a couple priority statements. I'm not going to go too into depth, but we do have 2. Mitigation, which is reducing the severity of climate impacts in Hawaii, which is, for example, ground transportation. Here in Hawaii and the rest of the US, we rely a lot on our cars to get to where we need to go. But then at the cost of that, it is also a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions across the state. And so a lot of our work is helping create that transition of our transportation system to greener ways of transportation, such as public transit, bikes, pedestrians. And so making those options more appealing, more affordable, more accessible, while addressing our climate goals. Another thing that we focus on is adaptation, adapting to the climate impacts we are already facing on the island. We've all heard about sea level rise one way or another here in Hawaii, because we're in an island, we're surrounded by water. And so, and we rely a lot on our coastlines because they house our beaches, they have our houses and the businesses that we know. And so our work provides guidance for these policymakers, planners, permitters to acknowledge and include sea level rise impacts in their planning and decision-making as they continue to make decisions that will impact Hawaii's future. So I talk a lot about we do this and we do that, but who is we? So the commission itself is a multi-jurisdictional effort that consists of 20 members and is currently co-chaired by the Department of Land and Natural Resources and the Office of Planning and Sustainability. The 20-member council consists of legislatures, planning directors from our different counties across the state, as well as directors and chairs from different state departments and boards. And so they meet quarterly to address climate change impacts in Hawaii, as well as update on how each department is ensuring that they are implementing our guidance and our statements within their respective operations within their departments. And so we also have a coordinator, established commission coordinator, Anu Hiddle, who is my boss, and she is in constant communication with the members and ensures that the commission continues to uphold the reasons and goals that we were created for. Okay, so that's a little bit about who we are and why we exist. And now I wanted to transition into the impacts that we were created to address in the first place. Now, talking about climate change can be a very overwhelming topic. It's so easy to get lost in the big picture, and there's a lot of conversations about the melting ice caps and their polar bears, but then a common question or a common mindset that a lot of people who don't spend their lives studying climate change, a question they have is, well, that is unfortunate, but how does this affect me personally? And how does that connected to me? And so as a climate change communication specialist, it's important to frame the conversation in a way that connects the dots with climate impacts in the places that we live in, because climate change is not an isolated event. It's so, as you guys know, it's very connected to different issues that we have in social justice and environmental, socioeconomic factors, public health. They're all connected one way or another. And so in the next couple of slides, I'm going to be talking about the climate impacts that are specific to Hawaii and bring into context what does this actually mean in the places that we live in and the places that we love. So just a little overview of what's happening now. We're seeing rising temperatures. In this graph that you can see here, basically it shows that there is a rising trend of temperatures from 1950s to the 2010s in the 4 main Hawaiian islands. And data shows that 2019 was actually the hottest year ever recorded in Oahu, and featuring the hottest day ever recorded in Honolulu's history. We're also seeing less and heavy rain. So basically we're seeing less rainfall events in general, overall. And when we do get rain, we get a lot. And so trends have shown that islands have been overall drier since 2008, and rainfall has declined significantly over the past 30 years. And because of this changes of rain patterns where we get rain bombs or no rain at all, this means that some areas are too dry and some areas are prone to flood events. And then lastly, rising sea levels. We're seeing more flood years and flood days. So for example, back in 2017, there was a record flood year for Honolulu, where there was a recorded 37 flood days in that year. And that is alarming because the historical average of flood days per year is only 4 days. So what we saw is that there was a 9-fold increase of flood days in our islands. And this is something that we will continue to see as our infrastructure, our roads are not equipped to absorb that much water in a short amount of time. So what does this mean? So this means a lot for Hawaii. And so I don't have the time to go through all of these impacts, but I'm just gonna showcase a couple, and talk about these to you. So with hotter temperatures, we are gonna be seeing an increasing loss of land due to wildfires. The science behind this in general is that because it's getting hotter and we don't have that much rain, there is less moisture being held within our plants and our trees. And because of that, they're more prone to catch on fire. And when they do get on fire, it's harder for us to put those fires out. And so as the days get hotter, as our summers get hotter, as the droughts become longer, we're gonna be seeing more wildfires across our islands. We're seeing this earlier this year, the wildfires in Big Island. And then we're also seeing that in the recent wildfires in central Oahu just a week or so ago. Floods are creating economic and public health risks. So floods can cause water contamination because they're stagnant, infrastructure damage, and loss of housing and property. As you can see in this picture, this is an aerial shot of Hanalei Bay in Kauai, and after the recent heavy thunderstorms in 2018, where the places there sustained flooding and landslides for the next couple of days. And this really impacted the people that live there in their everyday lives, where it impacted them from getting to where they need to go and doing what they need to do to sustain their lives. And then another impact is the cultural practices that we have at risk. So with sea level rise, our coastlines are at risk, and this will impact a lot of the cultural practices that we're trying to preserve, such as fish pond maintenance, the harvesting of salt, and gathering from the nearshore fisheries. And with this changing environment, these traditional practices that we're trying to restore and trying to sustain are at risk, and as the sea levels continue to rise around our islands. So yeah, so that's a couple specific impacts. There's a lot more, but in general, climate change will bring economic and public health risks, especially for marginalized and underserved communities. The impacts that climate change will take, that are already doing to our communities, is we can already see the impacts today, and these impacts are expensive. Our major roads and our infrastructure, the buildings that are impacted by climate change can add up to about $19 billion of damages that we need to pay if we don't collectively come together for action today. Okay, so that was a lot of very depressing news, and it's really easy to get overwhelmed when we talk about these impacts. But the reason why we feel it's important to talk about these is that by having these conversations about the impacts of climate change, we can better understand what these impacts are, so that we can start having the conversations of what we can do to either adapt or mitigate to these impacts. So now what I'm gonna do is that we're going to transition from talking about these climate change impacts and talking about what we have done as a commission in order to address these issues. So here in the So like I said, the commission was created to help guide Hawaii become climate ready. And we do that in multiple of different ways. One way we do it is producing resources and tools. So for example, we wrote up working papers on nature-based solutions. So looking into nature to find ways to help mitigate and adapt to climate change impacts and be more resilient. And then as well as create guidance reports for our policymakers or permitters or planners in order for them to integrate these potential sea level rise impacts as they plan for Hawaii's future. And so we build these for a wide of different people. And then for those that are not involved in either the government or planning or don't have the rigorous like scientific background, we also want to reach out to those communities as well. And so one way we do this is through Koloa Iki, which is our mascot to help highlight sea level rise in Hawaii. And so this is a multi-partner effort where we learn about sea level rise and climate change in a fun and engaging way. A lot of educational material, a lot of activities for keiki, a couple of these activities including a song challenge where we created a song that talks about sea level rise. We have different characters, super friends, that talk about the different issues of sea level rise in Hawaii, as well as different challenges to do with friends and family. We have our website that houses all these activities, for use for everybody. Okay, so some of the work that I've done to help create this communication of climate change is creating educational slide decks. So I break down complex climate change issues into digestible, easy to follow format. So here is this slideshow is just a couple of the topics that I've covered. And they talk about impacts in Hawaii that relates to different issues and connecting the dots of climate change to Hawaii and our communities. So these are all available on our website and can be used by different organizations like this one, like the Rotary Club and different hui's who want to continue the conversation about climate change impacts and in a way that is understandable to a wide range of audiences. We're also active on social media in amplifying the work of the commission. So we're active on Instagram and Facebook where we post those slide decks as well as events that talk about events that are related to the commission, our meetings, and just keep everyone who follows us informed of what we do to keep that level of transparency and the two-way conversation between us and the public. Our website also houses various climate blogs and short pieces that also break down climate change topics that are available for everybody to better understand what these topics are and what potential Hawaii has to combat these topics. And then we also collaborate with different organizations to create compelling storytelling content. So for example, this animation film that I created was made in partnership with the Board of Water Supply for Earth Week earlier this year, where we connect climate change to Oahu's watersheds and the emissions that come from ground transportation. And so, let's see, communicating climate change. Yeah, so that's some of the work that we do. And then in terms of partnerships, we also provide logistical support to host and sponsor various climate talks and events with world leaders, climate leaders, in order to continue the conversation. Because again, by having these conversations with a wide range of people is the way we can start actually having conversations about solutions to address these issues. So for example, we recently had an event with world-renowned climate scientist, Dr. Kim Cobb, who gave a talk about how the importance of local action when it comes to addressing the climate crisis. And and that was available, and we streamed that world in our social media, and I can share you guys the link as well for the recording. We also collaborate with other organizations to broaden our reach for our message. So we've collaborated with the East-West Center, UH Manoa, as well as showcase our presence at international conferences such as the United Nations Climate Change Conference, which we will be attending in November of this year, joining world leaders to push for more ambitious climate action, not just for Hawaii, but for the rest of the world. And so that's just a little gist of what we do. We have made a lot of progress through our work, but there is just so much more we can do. And so again, it's just spaces like this where we have the conversation about climate change and begin to talk about these impacts is how we can start coming as a collective in order for us to come together and find power in climate action here in Hawaii. So that's all I have. You can follow us on our social media, and then we have our website here. I'd be more than happy to talk with you guys and answer any questions you may have. Mahalo.
Thank you, Diana. It's a lot to take in, but if anybody has questions, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
I'm never shy, Diana. Dan Dinell, and what a terrific presentation overview. And it was just coincidental. I was talking with someone, a friend of mine, about first-generation college students and how that's such a wonderful thing, because then it just good future, and so congratulations on that. I wanted to find out a little bit more, and throw it in the chat. There was an announcement. There was an announcement about a week or two ago about Hawaii doing 10 million trees a year, restoring, growing, and to me, it just kind of came out of left field. I was just wondering, could you elaborate more on that initiative and what does it really entail?
Yes, so I believe, so I'm not directly involved with that project, but I believe that's part of the 1 trillion trees initiative, where there was an initiative to plant 1 trillion trees across the globe by 2030, I believe. And so, yeah, that's one of the different initiatives that came from community organizations that wanted to make a difference. And so this is, yeah, it's like a really great, one of the great initiatives that started because of a small group that wanted to make a difference. So, yeah, I'm not sure, was there a question there?
Yeah, just I didn't know like how's it being tracked, and you know, it seemed like it was worded like it's not necessarily new trees, it was like preservation. I mean, 10 million trees, this group knows is a lot of trees.
It's a
I mean,
lot
and
of trees, yes.
it's wonderful, but there's aspirational goals there. You know, I am just trying to, you know, understand more about it. But I can understand if it's not directly related to you, but I did, and I love the reference to the working plan nature-based solutions. I looked that up and it's mentioned in there. So yeah,
it's a very ambitious goal for sure, but to be like frank, like at this point we need those ambitious goals and those ambitious initiatives in order to make meaningful change in the crisis that we are all in right now. So yeah, I can yeah, I'll definitely look more into it, but definitely that's one of many initiatives that are in place right now in Hawaii.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Hi, this is Herschel. I just wanted to say that I also second how great of a presentation that was. And I guess I wanted to ask, I noticed like one of the main climate change issues tied to erosion from both flood and then, also lack of water. So I guess I just want to know, is that something, and me not being not being an expert and asking, is that something that is are there policies going into place in the state that are trying to prevent that, since that is such a big deal in Hawaii, given the amount of land and also like the age of the homes that are built in certain areas that really do need to be aware of the erosion issues, and then also just different like trails and everything that keeps Hawaii. Are there like initiatives preventing erosion or kind of getting ahead of those like issues with flooding and all of that? Are there policies that like the governor or the state is like improving upon? I also am new to Hawaii, so I just thought I thought I would ask.
Yeah, thank you, Herschel, for the question. Yes, coastal erosion is a very big issue that we have, especially because with sea level rise, that will negatively impact the infrastructure that is placed along our coastlines. And so there has been progress in terms of legislation that has been passed when it comes to coastal erosion. So I'm gonna share in the chat. One of the things that I did as for the website was compile a list of climate legislation that has been passed in Hawaii since 2018.
Awesome.
So this has little just summaries of what has been passed and what does it do basically. And so in terms of legislation, I believe there is here. So Act 178. So this is a legislation that was passed where planners and permitters have to disclose what potential sea level rise impacts a specific place will have in the future to private owners and public owners, so that they can make informed decisions about whether or not they want to continue building in a place that will be impacted in the future. And so that's just one of many. Let's see, sorry. We also have a couple blogs that I want to share with you guys. We have one about the future of Hawaii's beaches and its impacts on coastal erosion. So if you want to check it out, it's a super short read, super easy and digestible. And this talks about coastal erosion in Hawaii and its beaches.
There's also other laws that in all different areas. I know that the commission doesn't actually put these laws up, as in like putting them together, but there's a lot of different sectors that do focus very heavily on these different laws for their own sectors, and then it does kind of tie in with climate change. I just set up a meeting with VI, which is focused on wastewater management, and they're going to be coming to speak with us in February. And they're going to talk about some of the laws that they're working on for this legislative session that's coming up in January. But yeah, they talk about like cesspools and septic tanks, and with the rain and everything coming down, flooding through, everything, it's pulling like sewage, raw sewage, like 53 million gallons of sewage into our oceans and drinking water every single day. Okay. But then they're creating laws for it, right? So there's kind of things like that happening for every single sector that is really pushing for it. So, if I find new things, I could share with you guys too, because that's what I kind of do on my nonprofit. But they get a lot of this research from you guys, from the commission, and that helps support their legislation and bills and stuff. So thanks. I think if there's no other questions, we can wrap up, and we usually do our 4-way test. Does anybody have one more question? No? Let's see. Let me throw this screen on really quick, and we can do our 4-way test. And we'll be out of here tonight, because I know It's getting late for everybody. Oops. All right. Does anybody want to volunteer and do our 4-way test for us? Who's on? Should I just, hey, Scott, you want to do it?
I don't know exactly how you guys do it here, but I'll just kind of do it the way that we do it at our club and
Awesome.
have you guys say it with me. So first, is it the truth?
Is
Second,
it the truth? Oh, sorry. Everybody that's new, we kind of repeat.
oh no, I was just gonna say, I always just say second and then all you guys say it. So I was just gonna say, second, is it fair to all concerned?
Concerned.
And then third, will it be with
Will
goodwill?
it be
Goodwill.
friendship?
And fourth,
Fourth,
Four, will it
be
be
beneficial to
all
all
concerned?
concerned. And 5,
is
Will
it
it be
fun?
fun?
is it fun? 6, is it eco-friendly?
Nice.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I think that's it. We do have a couple inserts here in from Diana. I think it copies it for the recording, but I'll copy some of this stuff too. And definitely follow her on Instagram, actually her, but the Climate Office on Instagram. And if you have any questions for her, shoot it over to me and I can send it over to them. But other than that, stay tuned and definitely join us at our Pahana on next week, Tuesday. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Christina.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
I was going to send you a link. I should have invited everybody while they were on the call, but I was going to send you this guy, Rocky Mold, the executive director for the Hawaii Solar Energy Association, is going to be speaking at our club on Thursday.